I don't see the abolition of slavery and abortion as the direct historical analogs. For example, in Jewish and Christian theology, there are real differences about theologically, philosophically, when, well, life begins at conception, but what does that life mean? Its significance, and when does that count? And even on the conservative side, there are real differences in terms of perception and all the rest about life at different stages. So, miscarriages and kids that die after a year. So I personally, I find Western Europe has more restrictions on abortion than the United States has. So there will be, I think, a fair conversation about partial. I'm against partial birth abortion. That's my own stance. Barack has been, not been against it. But I think reasonable restrictions, how to make them not be abusive of parental consent doesn't work when the father is the perpetrator of, there's all kinds of complications there. All I'm saying is Roe v. Wade, I don't think is going to be resolved in the near term. It's just, whether it's Supreme Court justices, it's also issues of precedent, all the rest. So we can say the only debate is legal, and we'll keep having a legal debate for decades to come. And you're right, it won't be until that gets somehow resolved in some way, and it may never be resolved, this will be a debate. I'm saying in the meantime, I do think a dramatic reduction in the abortion rate is a worthy goal that people on both sides, pro-life and pro-choice, could embrace, that would make a difference in the lives of real people, and could help to focus the abortion debate on results and outcomes, more than just an endless legal conversation. I mean, let's have that conversation. As a civil rights activist, I would say that the civil rights legislation in 64 and 5 was much more important to changing the country than Brown versus Board of Education was in 54. And I think generally things in the democratic process, changed the country more deeply than court decisions. But Brown was an exception that many people supported. Something Roe was, something it wasn't, shouldn't have been. I'm saying those are important questions. I'm saying in the meantime, we could have serious abortion reduction as a social policy, and that would be a good thing.
I'd only add here, I guess I'd probably weigh in to some extent on Mike's side. I think that for many evangelicals, this issue is not one among many. It's not parallel to other issues of social policy that have to do with government spending or other things. Basically because, whatever your views on the topic, I think people can generally understand that if you share this view, you believe that the protection of innocent life from violence is the most basic commitment of a just society. It's a foundational commitment related to the protections of the Declaration of Independence, related to the great Judeo-Christian tradition of defending the weak and helpless. Okay? So it's not just one issue. Okay? For many people involved in political issues, it is the primary political issue. And they're capable of that categorization. Okay? The only thing I would say, though, then, just from the numbers, if I were analyzing it from an Obama perspective, from this latest Pew poll, is that evangelicalism itself is diverse on these issues based on the intensity of religious commitment. Okay? So you find, according to the numbers, and I think I'm remembering them exactly, that of evangelicals who attend church once a week or more, that about 75% are the most strongly restrictive on political issues relating to abortion. Among self-described evangelicals who attend church less than that about 45% share that viewpoint. I think there's an issue of principle here that's going to be hard for the most committed evangelicals to get over, okay? I do think, though, but I wouldn't discount the fact that the community itself is has some significant diversity here that Democrats could take advantage of.
However, the shift, though, the change now is, while I would agree that the principle of defending innocent life from violence is foundational, restricting that to almost single issue abortion voting, that's what's changing. Because I want to say, as an evangelical, protecting innocent life from violence is why I was against, and still am, the war in Iraq. Huge, massive loss of innocent life, and that's a life issue for a number of evangelicals.
Yes, and my only response there would be that irresponsible policy in Iraq that leads to genocide is also a life issue. Because genocide is equally a commitment to human rights and dignity. Right. And that, in fact, the regime that preceded the current one was capable of some of the greatest atrocities in history, and was comparable in many ways to Pol Pot. We argue that Saddam Hussein. And that, so it's a complicated issue when it comes to life.
Some of us were against, and were outspokenly against, Saddam Hussein for a long time. Were for the Bush goals of removing him from power and disarming him, but did not think the war in Iraq was the best or moral way to do that. Right. So all I'm saying is, the day is past when a politician gets to say, because I'm for a constitutional ban on abortion, I get a pass on the rest of my policies that result in all kinds of loss of innocent life in Darfur, in Africa, in Iraq. A consistent ethic of life cuts against the selective morality of both the left and the right. And John Paul agreed with Bush on abortion and disagreed specifically with George Bush on the war in Iraq for that very reason.
Do you want to add something, Mike? Or
No, I'll let you. I just want to make one quick comment. You said earlier about what do the religious conservatives have to show for all their work? And I would just simply say that in 1973, when Roe v. Wade was passed, the next day the New York Times had a headline: "Abortion debate settled." And the very fact that we're still having this conversation, we're still grappling with this very serious morally complex issue, we can give credit to religious conservatives for keeping this issue alive. So in that sense, they can say, we've kept this on the table and on the